now I'm humbled by a lot of the experiences. I think at the time I was such a cocky little kid, but
Well, of course, right?
yeah. And being able to do that, it's like, you're really feeding the beast there. So
My name's Adam, by the way, and this is about you, your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
how's it going, Tor? Nice to meet you.
Awesome. So, Tor, talk to me about, were you born and raised in New York?
Yeah, so I was born in Greenwich Village, and I lived in the Village area and Brooklyn until I was about 13, and then moved out to Jersey for a bit, did high school out there, and then came back for NYU.
Very cool. What was it like growing up in the city?
It was great. It was really great. I think that it imparts a sort of sense of independence and freedom upon you. Like, I was taking the subway alone at a very young age and getting around and being able to take care of myself very, very early on. So that's great. And I think that translated into like the music career of traveling around and touring like any big city. It's essentially the same, right? So it's like, how to get around, how to ask people, you just, get it. So it definitely helped me touring, especially touring when I was on my own, like no band or roadies or anything.
Sure. And especially coming from the biggest city, right?
Yeah. The only one. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. You moved to Jersey, you said in high school?
Yeah.
Well, when did you get into music? How old were you?
I mean, at a very early age, like I loved music. But I think that when it really became something that I started exploring for myself as a singer and a musician was when I moved to Jersey about 13. For the first half of the year, I was still going to school in New York. So I was driving an hour and a half. So I had all this time, and
wow,
my mom just like loaded up some records that she liked for me to listen to. So it was Ziggy Stardust, David Bowie, and then Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And I just listened to those records up and forth, like up and back, like every single day. And that coincided with getting music lessons in Jersey and then starting to write and sing and explore it. So around that age, around the time that I was leaving the city. I mean, before that, even I was taking lessons and whatever, but sort of passively. I didn't have the same passion.
Like piano lessons, or where did you start?
Yeah, piano lessons. I went to a pretty sort of art forward school. So we really, there was a point in time I was learning cello and violin, and then I landed on piano, and that was the one I moved forward with.
Okay. Yeah. And when did you start? You said you started writing music pretty early on as well?
Yeah, I mean, I distinctly remember a time when I was probably 7 or 8 where my aunt had passed away. And I had written like this kind of like improvisational piano piece for her. So that was like really the first time I did that. But a real full-fledged song was when I was in about 7th or 8th grade. And I played it at the talent show.
Wow.
And the response I got from it, and I did an original and a cover, and people resonated more with the original. And then that's when I really kind of got the bug and started writing a lot.
That's cool. What was so I always find this fascinating that artists will choose a talent show in front of the entire school as like your first performance. I mean, talk about the most vulnerable moment ever. Like you're in front of your entire peers, all your class. Whereas if you were playing like in a coffee shop or something, maybe you'd run into one of these people at one point in life, but like
you're anonymous.
You're right there to everybody that you know. And then to play an original song too. I mean, that's a pretty bold move.
Yeah, and I mean, on top of it as well, like I was new to that school, and I found it a bit difficult. Like everyone was nice, but I found it a bit difficult to break into the friend group a bit. So I'm a pretty quiet person, and so I think that kind of that performance took a lot of people by surprise.
Sure.
They didn't really know that I even played music. And then
Let
certainly
alone
that,
wrote your own song. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
wow. What was the cover you did? I'm just curious.
It was Boston by Augustana, or that's
Okay.
how you pronounce the band name. But yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool. So from there, did you like continue writing songs kind of by yourself, or at what point do you form a band ever, or?
Yeah, so I started writing songs, and then after the eighth grade talent show, I ended up going to a different high school, and I joined the jazz band at the high school immediately. And during that period of time, I was writing and writing, and I mean, it's pretty much all I did.
Mm-hmm.
I started making friends in that program, and we put a band together. And then I started writing for the band now, and we were doing like battle of the bands to play at like Bamboozle Festival here in
Oh,
Jersey.
wow.
Yeah, and like we won a couple years in a row, or we were one of several winners. There was like 4 or 5 bands that made it into the festival.
But you
So
got to
got
play Bamboozle that early on, huh?
yeah, so we were, yeah, probably like 15 and 16, because we did it several years in a row and we got to play. So then, yeah, like we would just have weekly rehearsals. I'd spend the whole week writing and working on new songs for the band to play and practice that weekend. And then we'd do open mics. And then that's how we got into the break contest. And we were playing like Stone Pony and New Jersey, and really like working our way into some of these venues in the city and stuff as well.
Wow. And then you ended up going to school at NYU, Clive Davis. Is that where you
Yeah,
went?
I went to the Clive Davis School at NYU, which was amazing. And I mean, I ended up staying only for 2 years, and then I got a record deal with Glassnote, and then
Okay.
so left. And it was always my goal. It was kind of a funny thing where it was like things really were working out, where I had kind of made a deal to myself that like my first 2 years in New York City, like I was going to get a record deal. I was gonna like drop out of school, which is like exactly what ended up happening in like kind of a weirdly prophetic way. But um yeah, it was really such a cool experience. And during that first year at NYU, I had a couple residencies where I was playing at like Rockwood Music Hall in the East Village, and then I'd play piano and perform during these burlesque acts at this venue called the Slipper Room,
Okay.
and these variety shows. So I was just this 18-year-old kid, and it was like really wild. It was a lot of fun, and it felt like you were seeing some like little secret side to the city. So it was a
Mhm.
nice way to start it off at NYU.
That's cool. How did you get into Clive Davis? Did you have to do an audition or like a performance?
Yeah, so it was uh you made like a pretty much like a reel. You could kind
Oh,
of
wow.
do it however you wanted. But so I just did a performance video, and then you had to fill out essays for NYU just in general.
Hmm.
And then Clive Davis had its own set of essays you'd had to write, and a Zoom interview as well, and all of that. So it was pretty extensive. And I mean, they only took like 55 kids a year or something.
Wow.
So it was a small school. So yeah, a very small school and a huge university. Yeah.
And to be a part of that, that's massive. What an
Yeah, it was amazing.
accomplishment.
And like, I mean, some of the kids that were in my grade have gone on to do like amazing stuff. I mean, that school just in general has bred a lot of amazing talents. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, my good friend was Maggie Rogers, and then John Cunningham, who's produced so much stuff for so many
Uh-huh.
different artists. It's just crazy to think this little friend group, so many people have gone on to do such amazing things.
That is so cool. And you said what, a couple years in is when you got signed to Glassnote?
Yeah, about like a year and a half in to
And
NYU.
how did that happen?
Well, I had a manager. I like posted music before of my band in high school on
Mhm.
MySpace and a few different places online. And it got the attention of some family and friends and stuff who passed it along to other people. And then I met my manager, Chris Gentry, my old manager, Chris Gentry, and he booked me a show in New York City. I played that for him with my band, and he really liked it. And so when I went to NYU, we started working together. He got me those residencies, and all the while inviting out labels and A&R and whatnot to all those shows, taking meetings. And then eventually it just stuck with Glassnote. Daniel Glass came to a Rockwood performance. He really enjoyed the set, took a chance, and it was really like a handshake deal. And then we were in and doing it with Glassnote. So pretty
Wow.
old school, given the fact I didn't really have any music out at the time. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
very much a leap of faith.
I mean, and look at their roster is insane. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure it was still at the time. They have like Phoenix and Mumford and Sons, like just
Yeah,
so many
Childish was on
Childish
there.
Young yeah, churches, like yeah, they have just like an extensive roster of bands. That must have been cool to be, within that kind of group.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I got to meet a lot of those people, and it was really such a great experience, and I learned a lot from them. And I'm no longer with Glassnote, but like
Right,
the
but
time there was great, and the artists, it was really like a little moment in time,
mhm. When you signed that deal, with like, were you working in another job? Like, at what point do you obviously quit school, so something
Well, yeah,
sparked?
at the time, I mean, when I first signed, it went pretty full on into the touring world and writing and recording. So, I mean, there was really no time to take on any other work. So I just went straight into it. Um, because if it weren't like a tour, then I was in the studio 24/7. And if not that, like some sort of press or promo or something.
Sure. Was that cool? Like, kind of overwhelming at all, or what was it like?
It was amazing.
Being
I mean,
being in this
especially
world now.
especially the touring. I love traveling. And so that was just a dream come true, really. Getting to go around the world and play music. And I met so many people, and now I have friends all over the world. I can go to so many cities now and hit someone up and be like, let's go out. And I've
Mhm.
gotten to see, a very unique perspective on a lot of places, because I think when you're touring, especially at a certain level, you're kind of going to like sort of the cooler parts of town. It's not really the touristy spots. So you just get to see a unique perspective on each place,
Mhm.
um, which is what I love. So that alone and playing gigs, like that's all I want to do with the rest of my life. So being able to do that at such a young age too, it was amazing. And thinking that like, oh, I've been around the world and seen more than, I mean, most can even say in an entire lifetime. So it was, yeah, a dream, a total dream. I
For
think
sure.
now I'm humbled by a lot of the experiences. I think at the time I was such a cocky little kid, but
Well, of course, right?
yeah. And being able to do that, it's like, you're really feeding the beast there. So uh, I learned a lot. I've matured a lot since.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was wild. Yeah.
What was it for? Did Glassnote put you on some cool tours right away? Is that what really got
Yeah,
you
well, so
going?
I ended up doing a tour with Aurora, who was also another Glassnote artist at the time, and we did a
Yeah.
US tour, and that was amazing. And so fun, and she's wonderful, and her band was great. So that was my first kind of headline go around. I mean, opening for a
Opening
headliner on a
slot.
whole
Yeah.
tour. And then James Bay, I did a tour with him around
Wow.
the US, and that was sick. But that wasn't really through Glassnote as much as like he was a fan of my music, because I was recording and spending a lot of time in London.
Mhm.
And he came to one of my London gigs and he was like, why don't you come out with me? And so that was like a
Wow.
much more organic one, um, which was so cool, really nice. And he's a wonderful person. So
That's awesome. And the first record you put out was Headlights. Is that that was your first EP?
that was my first EP. Yeah. I recorded that with Elliot James and John Green. Uh, John Green, who I wrote pretty much the whole album with. Uh, and we recorded it in London at a studio in West London called East Coast, which is where we then went on to record American English with that same team at the same place.
Okay. And
Yeah.
American English blew up for you, right? I mean, that
It really
one.
did, like Carter and Cash, especially. But I mean, like, I think it started, Headlights really sort of set a great foundation, the song itself, too, specifically. And from there, then Carter and Cash came out as a single. And then that really did a lot of things and set the record up pretty well.
Was that like, did it, I mean, if you look at it on Spotify, it's insane. I mean, it has 10.5 million plays. But was that something that, like, did you get radio play with that record, or like what really sparked that song?
It was a mix. Like it did get a lot of radio play. It did that, and then it also got into NBA 2K17, the video
Wow,
game.
that's cool.
And that was like the second wave. Like it went and played on a lot of alternative radio,
Mm-hmm.
and satellite radio and whatnot. And then it kind of was, ran its course there and then landed on the video game. And then that just like set up a whole new, set like for that song.
Were you a video game guy at all, or not really?
I play, like, honestly, NBA, like I do play that game. So it was pretty sick, and it was fun to play against friends because you're just like, well, even if you beat me, like it doesn't really matter because
Like, my song's on the game.
Yeah.
Like, so you beat me, but
Yeah.
check this out. My name and song is on this.
I win every time. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's amazing. Was it hard to kind of follow that up? Like, I mean, they always say like the next record is the whatever, the sophomore push. Was it hard to, or were you even thinking about that in your mind?
I mean, for me personally, like what I gauge success as is like on a creative end,
Mm-hmm.
like how can I get better, and in every sense with like my lyrics and the music and everything. And so I think that it was, yeah, kind of like we spent so much time promoting American English. It's like, okay, so what next? What do we do now?
Right.
And for me, what that meant was like I kind of need to get away from the whole kind of industry element of it. And I need to just go off on my own and make something that feels like me. Because I think with American English, though I love that record so much and it did so many things for me, it felt like at the time that I was making a lot of compromises, and there were so many people in my head and pulling me in a million different directions, like the label and management and this and that. And so it became really hard to write and record anything because you just felt like you had all this noise in your head. So I just went away. And I think this kind of led to the beginning of the end with Glassnote a little bit, but like I went off on my own and just recorded a whole record in New Jersey, and then turned around and I was like, well, I need all the money now for the record. But I had to do that. I had, because I knew that I was going to a place with and working with people who were like sort of unproven. And I just knew that if I let people in on what I was doing, that there would be a lot of resistance and a lot of people telling me, no, don't do that. And I had heard so many no's in the past. I was just like, I have to make my own thing. And so then that was Surviving the Suburbs.
Yeah.
Which was such like a interesting period in my life. I had come off all the highs and all the craziness and busyness of American English and touring the world. And I just came back to my hometown, and pretty much moved back in with my parents being like, okay, I guess I'm here again. Yeah, and then I got a job like working at a music school, which is where the studio was. And then
cool.
I just every morning I got up and I'd be the first person there in the rehearsal rooms. I'd be writing from like 8 on through into the afternoon. I'd leave for a bit, have lunch, come back, and I'd stay in the studio all night and pretty much do that every single day, all day. So I'd never left that place.
And that's what birthed the Surviving the Suburbs record?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. And so the label had no idea you were doing this? You're like,
I told them I was making a single. And so they gave me the money for a single. And then I was like, actually, I made the whole thing.
Here's the whole album. Deal with it.
So, they weren't the happiest, but it was what I had to do. And I didn't really give a shit.
Right. There you go. There you go. So you put the record out. Did you tour that album as well?
Yeah, we did a run of the US, came home, and then it was time to figure out the next thing,
And so then you get home, start figuring out the next thing. And then how much longer? Because that record came out in 2018. How much longer after that did the world shut down?
Well, I guess I started recording. I mean, so there came a point where it was like clearly I was going to get kicked off the label. You could just feel it. And so which is all fair and good, and I kind of saw the warning signs. And so I just started thinking, well, what's my next move? And I had all this music already together, and I had become very good friends with this guy named Adrian who lives in New York. And I love the music he makes. He has his artist name is Aid. And I've always really respected him. And we met at a party in the city that I was hosting. And so we started talking about writing some music together. And I had these songs, and he helped me finish and put some over the edge. And then it just became clear, like, well, why don't we make this an album? Because it's really sort of shaping together.
Mm-hmm.
And so as everything was ending with Glassnote, we then started to record the project, which was like November 2019.
Okay.
We just went full on in, and then COVID hit around end of February, early March. We took 3 months off, came back together when it felt safe. And we just dedicated all our time, the entire pandemic, to just making a record that we thought sounded perfect, which is what I'll be releasing next year.
Right. Okay. And you got a couple of songs out off the record now?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. So we put out Generation of Me in October at the beginning of the month. And then at the end of the month, we put out All Time Low last week.
Very cool. Very cool. And then, so the record's done, it's wrapped up. And was it hard to kind of, was it finished? Like when would you say the whole record was done? And was it hard to kind of keep it? Was it ever like, maybe we shouldn't start releasing songs yet because we don't know if we're going to be able to play live? Or?
Well, like what kind of ended up happening is that, it became evident that the pandemic wasn't going to end anytime soon. And so we felt as if, why don't we just take our time? Like, what world is there really to put it out into?
Mm-hmm.
There came to points where we were working for so long that I started to question, like, is this becoming diminishing returns? And I'm glad that I listened to Adrian, because he was really the one telling me, like, let's just keep pushing. We can make it better. We can make it better. And he was really so right. Like, when you listen to old mixes from months before to where we landed, like, the difference is astonishing. And so we just felt like, why don't we just take our time? So we went from there, and then I'd been done with the record maybe, end of midsummer. Like, I had it for a while, and then I spent time, because I was independent, or I am independent, sending it around to everyone, getting opinions on the record, getting, what people thought the single should be, and, anything, just having anyone listen to it, really. And it became very informative, a bit of an outline for how I should release. Mm-hmm. So that leads us to now, where I put out All Time Low and Generation. I think I'm going to chill for the holiday season and then pick it up next year. But it's kind of reactionary. It's an interesting thing now, where it's like, I'm not working with a corporation, really, or like, so
you can do what you want, right?
Yeah, you can kind of, guerrilla style. It's just, see what happens, see what's working, hold things back, push them forward. So all of that is to say, it's like, we'll just kind of see. But right now, like, I'd like to put the album out in February or March, with another single or so coming early next year.
That's amazing. Have you had a chance to play any shows since the pandemic?
Yeah, I have played a few in the city, and I'm coming to LA on Friday, and I'm playing one at Hotel Cafe on the 13th of November.
Oh, that's a great venue.
Yeah, I love that place. And then after that, I go to Austin December 2nd, and I'll be playing Swan Dive.
Cool.
So a couple of little gigs here or there, trying to get myself back out there. But I played in New York a lot, and to the point of which, like, it's time to get out of here.
What was it like playing your first shows back from maybe not playing for over a year?
That's funny, because I was really expecting it to be quite emotional.
That's what I would imagine, right? Yeah.
And that's like what I was preparing myself for. And then you got up there and it was strangely just like business as usual.
Really?
It felt like one of those things, which is how the pandemic has felt like for me in general, where it's like equally feels as grueling and long and sluggish as it has, but like at the same time, incredibly fast, like a blink of an eye from the beginning of it to now.
Right.
It's
it
like,
doesn't. Go ahead.
Sorry. Time is just warped completely. So I just felt like up there on stage, it was like yesterday that I had been up there. I was definitely like, I think after the fact it hit me, I was very appreciative and thankful and realized like, oh, this really all could have been and kind of was taken away from us, but could have been forever. And just made me appreciate it. And I think oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think like kind of bringing it back to that young, cocky kid I took everything for granted. And to go full circle with this moment and being on stage for that really made me have a deeper appreciation for what it is that I do and I'm gifted and able to do with music, you know.
And hopefully that will rub off on people coming as fans too, I'd imagine. Like,
for sure.
Tor's coming through on a Tuesday. I got work tomorrow. Like, well, and I think people are going to be like, I better see him because
no, I think it goes
for
everybody involved in the show, the fans and the performers. Like,
right.
There's definitely like a massive desire to get out there. And less excuses being made to not show up to gigs,
right? Because you might not be back in 2 months. It could be 2 years with the way things are. You know what I mean?
Who knows?
Well, that's exciting, man. The record's coming out next year. You got some amazing singles out. All Time Low is the most recent one, and I can't wait to hear the rest of the record.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really, really excited about this one. It feels the most organic, I'd say, in terms of how it came about and how it was created. And all the while, like making it with Aid, like that was just a friendship that blossomed. And I mean, really, that's like the beauty of it is like how close the two of us became, and just really like best friends. And if nothing else, like that makes it all worthwhile, to be honest.
You have a friendship, right?
Yeah.
And an incredible album, but
thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tor, for doing this, man. I really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
I do have one more question for you. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
I'd say listen to your instincts and realize what it is and why it is that you want to be making music, and to come to terms with that and be able to name it pretty early on. Is it because you want to make a statement with your music or whatever the case may be? Is it because you want to be famous? And that's no judgment on either end. I think that there's validity to everything, but realize that, because it'll be your guiding light as you go forward. You'll know why it is that you're doing what you're doing. You'll be able to make decisions. You'll be able to listen to the people around you and take advice and pass on other advice, but you'll know why. Yeah, I think that's what I would say. Bringing it backward.